Hello and welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Tuesday, June 3rd. I'm your host, Tony Gerdeman. There are 88 days until the Texas game, 179 days until the Michigan game. And when I say I'm your host, I should say I'm your host, temporary host, as Tom Orr is out on vacation. If you're planning your next event, make it unforgettable. The Grateful Griddle, Columbus's favorite food truck, is serving up smash burgers, gourmet sandwiches, and good vibes. Book your catering today at Grateful Griddle. Today we've got on Marc Givler from BuckeyeHuddle.com. As you all know, we're here. It is recovering from a big weekend of official visits for the Buckeyes. And there are three guys that I wanted to touch on, those being the three five-star prospects, according to the rankings that they were there. Five-star offensive tackle, Felix Ojo. Five-star running back, Savion Hiter, and five-star linebacker, Xavier Griffin. But Mark, first, I wanted to start with Felix Ojo. First, give us what you can, what you want on how things went for him and the Buckeyes.
Yeah, Ohio State does a great job on these official visits. They've got a long track record of nailing these things. They're very thorough. They customize these for each kid, what their interests are, what they can do for each kid developmentally. And Felix and his family have been very impressed with Ohio State throughout the process. Even, during the transition from Justin Fry to Tyler Bowen, we actually met with Felix at his school a few weeks ago. So we're kind of fresh off that interview still with him. So everything went very well this weekend. It's going to be, can they slay the Texas Dragon here? That's the question. Can they slay Texas for an in-state five-star offensive tackle? And I know everyone's gonna talk about NIL and this, that, and the other. Ohio State, as I wrote in the Skull session the other day, is going to be very competitive in the NIL space on this recruitment. But when push comes to shove, are they going to be able to convince him to head north? I've had multiple people down in Texas, down close to Felix, kind of tell me, like, look, it probably is the team to beat, Texas, but they think Ohio State is probably the best competition there. So if anyone can do it, it's Ohio State. But this is going to be just unbelievably competitive here these next 2 months as he goes into decision mode, wants to decide in July.
It seems like Ohio State is being pretty forthcoming in the whole NIL sphere in terms of, like, they're going to swing for the fence there. And
Yep.
whether that's good enough or not we'll see. But will it take an Ohio kid? Like, will it take a five-star number one offensive tackle from Ohio for Ohio State to finally win one of these national battles? Whether it's for the best left tackle in the country, will it require it to be an Ohio kid for them to win one of these?
No, I think they can. I think they can be competitive in these battles. It's just there are so few of these guys, and there's 100 running backs out there. You trip over a running back on every every block of every major metro area. You can find a good running back, but there are so few of these guys, and it's such a valuable position, and the bidding wars are there. It's ferocious. It's ferocious. And so you're going to get into these situations where we're talking seven figures are getting thrown around, and these are, 17-year-old kids, and there's a lot to consider on both sides of this. The kids have a lot to weigh, and the schools have to decide, okay, are we going to play this game? And the one thing I do credit Ohio State for is they generally are doing, like, kind of best and final type of stuff. They're not going to get into here's your offer. Oh, wait, school X offered this much. No, okay, we can go up here and then, play this, constant climbing the ladder game. They don't do that. They come out with they show some data on what their guys have been able to make. And they have kind of some honest discussions about that. But no, I think even if there's a kid, like, let's say there's another Paris Johnson that comes along at some point, although I would argue Sam Greer is very good, but let's say there's another Paris Johnson that comes along at some point, a top 10 ranked player in the country. that's going to be, I think, a harder thing for Ohio State to win than it was 5 years ago, because 5 years ago wasn't going to be as easy for other schools for, because if it's now Texas is coming in and Clemson's coming in and USC and Florida and Oregon are coming in, and they're able to offer $2-3 million to a kid in your backyard, and you're like, oh my goodness. So I don't know that it's so much geographical. I think Tyler Bowen is recruiting really hard. I think that's a big part of it. I don't know that they've had guys who have attacked recruiting the way Bowen has at that position. I think that's a big part of it. A little bit of proof of concept, I think, has been helpful. They're starting to get there again. Paris Johnson having a good NFL career. Donovan Jackson goes in the first round this year. They kind of had a drought of these big-time kind of first-round pick types. They're starting to get back to that. They win a national championship again. So, again, the proof of concept here is really good now. And they also have 4 offensive line coaches now. They've got 3 former O-line coaches helping Tyler Bowen. Every kid that visited in the spring for practice mentioned that to me as a plus.
Well, and that's what I want to touch on really quickly, because the players love it. The Ohio State players, the offensive linemen, love that they've got basically 3 veteran offensive line coaches and then a GA that they can relate to as well. But you've got all of these guys, whenever there's a play at practice, everybody gets coached up right then. And so it's fascinating to watch, and you can tell that the players themselves love it. I was just wondering how long before that becomes a recruiting tool, and it sounds like it already has been.
And how long before someone steals that? How long until Texas and USC and Oregon are doing the same thing? Because every kid that came through, because it's great for the current players, of course, but as a recruit, you're looking at it like you want to play. You want to play early if you can. You don't want to be sitting around, and you don't want to be standing around at practice watching the 1s and 2s just go at it, and you're there, just watching. So for these young guys who are, seniors, going to be seniors in high school, they're looking at this and saying, well, I'm getting the same attention and the same amount of reps as the starting left tackle. So in the same coaching and everything else, they're not hiding me, on the other side of the field from the one, it's very inclusive of all the players on the roster at a position group. And that gives a lot of opportunities for young guys.
Nick Saban would probably have 6 offensive line coaches by now, based on what Ohio State has been able to do.
Nick Saban would read, or have someone read to him, the quotes of these kids, and would immediately be sprinting down to the indoor, I want 6 line coaches by Monday or you're all fired. It just kind of all I want everyone's resumes. I want every contact you have that there's offensive line coaching experience. I want those resumes on my desk by the end of the day.
And 4 of them need to come from the SEC, legit offensive line coaches from the SEC, and the best recruiters. You mentioned there's 100,000, a million running backs out there. One of those running backs, Savion Hiter, the number 1 running back in the nation from the state of Virginia. Ohio State has done pretty well in the past when recruiting the number 1 running back from the state of Virginia, Travion Henderson, of course. Derek Green did not go so well, but that was Ohio State's choice way back when. But how are things shaking out here?
Yeah, and I've been pretty forthcoming on this. My vibe has been that he is going to be difficult to pull from Tennessee. Tennessee's got a lot working for it here in terms of a fairly thin depth chart, a geographical advantage, not a bad drive to Knoxville from where he's at. And, NIL dollars, again, I've said Ohio State's going to be competitive with Ojo, and they are. How competitive is Ohio State going to be for any running back after taking 3 last year? Tennessee's up there with some of their deals they're making right now. So that's going to be interesting. I think the combination of all of those things are going to end up being tough for Ohio State to overcome. That being said, I'll fully admit Ohio State feels better. Ohio State sources feel better about Hiter than I do. So there's an insistence there that they are very much in this. He does have a great relationship with Carlos Loughlin. So I'm giving him a puncher's chance. I wouldn't I wouldn't predict him in the class at this point, but we'll see how it goes.
And there's been a moving on, I guess, from Carson Baker, another running back who was going to be canceled his official visit. And so now is it just down to Derek Cooper, who's going to be here later in the month, and then also at Favor Aki, is that correct? Will be here this weekend. Is that basically where they are now? And if it's just one, they're okay with that in terms of landing one guy?
Yeah, I think that's the sense I get right now. Favor's visit is this coming weekend. That's going to be kind of a milestone, I think, moment for them and for Favor in terms of okay, are we doing this or not kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so I think we could probably I think we'll know good, bad, or whatever. We're going to know, I think, fairly quickly coming out of that visit where things are at with Favor Key. And then I think from there, it's okay, if they can land Favor Key, now let's chase Hiter and Derek Cooper, if it just ends up being Favor Key after taking 3 running backs last year, mm-hmm. they're okay with that. But they'll make room for a second running back if it's someone they feel is elite, and Hiter and Cooper are top of the board type players. So,
and I think even if they just signed one running back this year, they will have more than one running back, freshman eligible running back next year, because I don't see all 3 of the guys here, all 3 of the true freshmen in 2025 burning their red shirts. So they'll still have plenty of youth moving forward. The last guy I want to talk about is 5-star linebacker Xavier Griffin from Georgia. You guys talked to him on the Southern Swing, did you not?
No, but I talked to him Sunday.
Okay.
After his visit, so I connected with him Sunday. It was kind of an interesting thing. I can kind of share this real quick. So at that point, when we were on the trip, we knew Ohio State was kind of lurking, but he hadn't decommitted from USC yet. And it was going to be uncomfortable for him to do an interview about Ohio State when he's committed to USC, and just the visit hadn't been made public yet and everything else. So it was just kind of didn't want to put him in a bad, tough situation type of thing. And then as soon as we got back, he opened it up. But I caught up with him after the visit.
And so how did things go then this weekend?
Yeah, he was very impressed. This is his second time in Columbus. He did make an early unofficial visit early in the process before he committed to USC. Again, the 1-2 punch here, what they're really trying to sell is the 1-2 punch of Matt Patricia and James Laurinaitis. So what you have there is you have a position coach who, won the Buckeyes Award and played at a very high level in the NFL, was not just an NFL player, was a very good NFL player. And then you have an NFL coach. And so they're trying to sell him on that 1-2 developmental punch of hey, between the two of us, there's nothing we haven't seen. There's no scenario we have not seen. We've won Super Bowls. We've won Buckeyes Awards. We've been drafted, in the first round. We've done that. There's literally nothing on a football field that between the two of us, we haven't experienced. Mm-hmm. So that's what they're trying to sell him on. And I think he's listening, and I didn't give them much of a shot coming into the weekend. I think they helped themselves quite a bit. Alabama's the school that everyone is linking him to, and they're going to have to slay that dragon a little bit too, because they're going to have to battle a perception here. Whether you agree with it or not is kind of irrelevant. It's just because perception is reality in recruiting. The perception is that Alabama is just kind of the place to go for linebackers that can also rush the passer. That's kind of like the perception, but Nick Saban's not there anymore. Mm-hmm. So Ohio State's trying to break through that and be hey, Sonny Styles pretty good. Our pedigree, between the two of us pretty good. Why don't you give us a shot? And so I think that's a big battle there. I mean, geography is what it is, but I think that's kind of the battle right now, and Alabama having that long-standing kind of tradition there, more recent history.
So is he considered, he sees himself as a pass rusher rather than an inside guy? He would be an outside, he would be a versatile, outside linebacker, but can also rush the passer, can kind of, you can walk him up to the line of scrimmage. You can do a lot of things with him. No, but yeah, he's not considered a Mike. I'm just fascinated to see what Ohio State does defensively this year to intrigue more of these defensive recruits and what they do and how Matt Patricia showcases this and showcases that and what that means for their recruiting. Can they start getting in on these guys that see themselves as a pass rushing outside linebacker, which Ohio State doesn't really have. They just have defensive ends. And so it's going to be interesting to see. And I'm sure this is a talking point for the Buckeyes themselves as they move forward through the recruiting process.
Yeah, no question. I'm with you. I'm curious to see. I mean, Patricia sits these guys down and kind of talks about how he thinks he can, bring the best out of them or put them in the best positions. But, we heard rumors of the we heard tall tales of the jack position for so many years under Knowles. You go back even a little further, they had a bunch of feels like almost made up positions that we never really saw utilized fully. So I am curious, and let's face it, as I've kind of pounded the table for over the years, Sonny Styles would be a great player to experiment with on some of this stuff. And so I'm curious, if they're able to, regardless of whether these guys commit in the summer or not, because we know commitments don't always mean a whole lot, regardless of whether a Griffin or a Tyler Atkinson would commit in the summer versus, the winter doesn't really matter. If they can come out, in October and show 5-6 games worth of, hey, this is what we're doing with someone like Sonny, we're moving him around, what we told you back in the spring, here it is on the field, what we showed you on paper. So I think that's going to be an interesting component to all of this as well. Just because, again, the more proof of concept you can have, the better. And if Sonny has a big year, I think that's going to attract a lot of these types of linebackers.
I completely agree. My suggestion, let him rush the passer on every snap against Grambling State. Let him put it all on video there, get up a bunch of stats, and they're going to be like, here's our proof of concept. Never mind the opponent. This is what we're going to do with our linebackers. But behind it, I'm fine letting Sonny Styles get after the passer now and again, because if you've got Arvell Reese and Peyton Pierce behind him, I think those two guys are going to be just fine doing what they do. If they do some 3-3-5 or 3-3 stuff, and let Sonny go a little bit, have some fun and get after it. But thank you, Mark, for jumping on, giving us an update on the official visit weekend this past weekend on 3 of the nation's best players that Ohio State is certainly in on. And of course, you and Berm are talking about this on the Buckeye Huddle message board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus. And there's a lot more there. Not just these 3 guys. There were about a dozen guys on official visits this past weekend. I think we got updates on just about everybody. So you can find that at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Got some write-ups. And as I said, we're always there talking about it on the message board. So it's a great resource for you if you're into this. And we've got more visits the rest of the month. Camps coming up this month as well. So we're going to be talking about it all there at the BuckeyeHuddle.com. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.